What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by two co-hosts today. I've got Allie with me. I've got Will with me. Some of you might know Will from Fireside Rangers. Go sub to that if you haven't already. A lot of you probably know Allie from Twitter. She's been posting a lot of cool graphic designs, and she's big on the New York Giants Twitter community, so make sure to go give her a follow as well. But we're here, one night away, one more sleep until the draft, and I am so ready for this to be over. This pre-draft process has been grueling. The rumors galore, the smoke screens galore, way too much going on. I am ready to finally know who the Giants are going to draft. But we got one more night of speculation, one more night of chit-chatting about what might happen. So that's what we're doing tonight, baby. We're here to talk NFL draft the night before. So we're going to go ahead and dive into all that and answer any of the questions that you guys might leave for us down in the chat. But before we do so, Allie, how are you doing today, my friend?
I'm not gonna lie to you, I am nervous as hell, and I have no idea why. I feel like I've had, this weird, pit in my stomach for about, a week now. I don't know who the Giants are gonna draft, so it's making me nervous because I have no idea what's going to happen. I feel like I'm going to be happy, I hope, but I'm still nervous, so yeah, how are you feeling, Will?
Oh, man, honestly, if I'm going to be completely honest, these past couple months I haven't thought about the draft. There's just been so much going on, but I mean, I've been keeping up with it, but I know who I want the Giants to take, and if they don't take him, I don't know. I'm not going to be happy. But I feel like there's not much that they can do wrong. I mean, there's at 6 they have, a Dunze they can take. They could take Neighbors. They could trade up. They could trade back, do something. I'm just excited to see what Joe Shane's been cooking up.
Me too. I mean, I was just watching ESPN like 45 minutes ago, and I want to say it was Dan Graziano was on there and talking on SportsCenter and saying that he just spoke to Joe Shane, and Joe Shane said that they've made calls into the top 3. They've made calls behind, and they're pretty much road mapping scenarios for either or, and they're kind of like exploring all options. Joe Shane said that. So I think that's notable. I think in the past we've had situations where the Giants have said what they aren't planning on doing. Last year, he was pretty open to not trading down. I feel like he kind of made that clear prior to the draft. But this year, he's been very clear that he's going to do trade up, trade down, stick a pick. Like, he has all the options on the table, which, again, I think is different from what we've seen in the past. And it is very important. But Tommy Dixon here does bring up an important point that I want to mention as I accidentally cut off Will's head with the graphic. How silly is trading up with only 6 picks? And I got to say, he makes a good point because having only 6 draft picks and trading up leaves very little wiggle room. I thought prior to the Brian Burns trade that a trade up made a lot of sense, having 2 second-round picks. You send one of those, you keep the other. Maybe you send both of them, it moves you up. Now they only have 6 total draft picks. Allie, how concerned are you that if the New York Giants do trade up, they're not going to have enough capital to flesh out their roster? And do you think that that might motivate them to trade down?
I am not a fan of trading up, and I feel like I've been really, really vocal about that. I feel like if it's for Drake May, then maybe I can be convinced to do the trade up. But if it's not for Drake May, I don't want to do it. Joe said it before. I don't feel like we are 1 or 2 players away. I can name off the top of my head maybe 4 positions that I feel like I want. I want a quarterback. I want a safety. Maybe one more person on the D line. We need another wide receiver. Do need that quarterback. There's still a lot of positions that need to be filled, and I feel like just trading up right now, it's going to make it a lot harder to do that. But I'm not opposed to trading down for the 6th pick, depending on who's there either, just to get more and help us fill out that roster too, because it has to be, especially cornerback. I feel like I'm big on the secondary. Secondary is absolutely atrocious. I looked at the depth chart the other day, and I was like, oh my God, someone needs to get Deontay Banks help. I swear to God.
Yeah, I think that's a sneaky pick, is that the Giants trade down and do land a cornerback. I'm going to hand it off to you in a second, Will, but I just have to point out a couple more of these chats that we got. MD said, his wife said it's either him or Fireside Giants. He chose Fireside Giants. We're rocking with you, MD. We're here to deliver. Thank you so much for tuning in. And then there was one other one right here. Brendan Green left his son's basketball game early to listen to this. That's the passion that we love to see, the Fireside Giants community. It is real. It is intense. Thanks again, everybody who contributed or tuned in to the 20K live stream, or not live stream, the special premiere. That was awesome, and we do appreciate all your support. But, Will, let's get back into it. Trading up to 3, I know you mentioned it just a second ago. It's what you would like to see happen. Different opinion from Allie's, but why do you think trading up for presumably a quarterback is the right move for the New York Giants. And I will warn you, do not rip into Daniel Jones too hard, because we do have some very strong fans of Daniel Jones in the chat.
I wouldn't be opposed to trading up to 3, because I think when you're going through what the Giants are going through, you really do want to solidify the quarterback position, and then you start building around him after that. I mean, I know that Zach Wilson isn't their quarterback now, but they got Zach Wilson. Then they were able to get Garrett Wilson the next draft, and now the Jets are probably in a prime position. Maybe they're going to take another wide receiver. But honestly, now that Allie was talking about it, like, I could honestly see us. I wouldn't be mad if we didn't trade up and we traded back. I mean, you trade. Let's say, I know we were talking about it earlier. You trade back with the Jets to 10. Maybe you take Brock Bowers, a very good tight end. I know we talked about. It's a kind of a tight end driven league right now on your offense. You want a dynamic tight end, and I mean, he's one of the best tight end prospects to come out of in the draft since, I mean, I guess Kyle Pitts, but I feel like he's a little bit better than him. But I honestly wouldn't be opposed to either. I'd love to see the Giants take a quarterback. I know that's a very big need, but if we only have 6 picks, I mean, if you want to, you could trade back and get not as many picks, but a lot more picks going into next year as well. So then that could be a difference maker. But I honestly could see both. I see both sides of the argument now.
Yeah, it really could go either way. One of the arguments that I like to make for trading down, I posted today on Twitter, and Will, I know when we were doing Fireside Rangers earlier, we chatted about this a little bit as well. Talking about wide receivers and the hit rate of them in the first round versus day 2 versus day 3. If you take a look at the 10 highest paid wide receivers in the NFL right now, 80% of them were drafted outside of the first round. Only 20% of them in the first round. And then if you want to go by Pro Football Focus grading, 70% of them were drafted outside of the first round, the top 30 wide receivers in the league, according to PFF's grading. So that opens up the kind of criteria a little bit more, so you get more of those rookie draft pick players. CeeDee Lamb obviously included that, where he's not in the top 10 highest paid. But it is pretty eye-opening when you dive into it and you take a look at the talent of wide receivers versus the talent of quarterbacks. Whereas opposed to, you're getting 70% hit rate for quarterbacks in the first round versus 30% on days 2 and 3. Pretty big disparity there. And that ultimately, taking a look at that and knowing how great this draft class is at the wide receiver position, how deep it is, probably does motivate me to trade down if I'm at the number 6 pick and the quarterback that I like isn't there. To be clear, I'm comfortable taking Drake May or JJ McCarthy with the number 6 overall pick. I am that high on McCarthy now. In fact, I would even consider trading up for him, though it's not my preference. But I want the quarterback at 6. But if it's not there, as much as I love Malik Neighbors, Rome Odunze, and Marvin Harrison Jr., I would totally be compelled to trade down if the proper trade package came through, just knowing how high of a hit rate wide receivers have outside of the first round. So, Allie, what is your take on that? You know, the prioritization of wide receiver. And, well, I'll get your take on this too, because I know when we were doing FSR earlier, you were talking about our wide receiver core is not nearly as bad as people make it out to be. So I'll let you give your take on that. But Allie, I do want to hear your thoughts on this wide receiver group, whether or not the Giants should prioritize one on day 1. Maybe they should trade down, take a receiver. Maybe they should stick a pick at 6. Or do you think that the evidence points towards taking a wide receiver outside of the first round?
I mean, the more you go into the numbers, I feel like I don't mind trading down and getting a receiver. Like you said, it's a really deep receiver class. And I think a couple months ago, just for fun, I was going through old draft classes. And I feel like the better wide receivers came out of the 4th or 5th round. I don't remember all the names off the top of my head, but highest paid wide receiver, St. Brown, he was taken in what? The 4th round? The 5th round?
4th or 5th round pick, I think.
Puka Nacua, 5th round. A stud. So there's a lot of people that do drop. And I think talking about our wide receiver core, I don't think it's as bad as people make it out to be either. And I'm very passionate about that, especially with Darius Slayton. I might go in a little ramble here because I love Darius Slayton. And I've seen so many arguments saying, oh, we have a 5th round pick and you're trying to make him a wide receiver 1. It just doesn't work like that. But again, think of the 2 names I just said, St. Brown, Puka Nacua, those are also late round people. So your argument that Darius Slayton can't be a wide receiver 1 because he was a 5th round pick honestly doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. But yeah, I like our wide receiver core. I love Darius Slayton. I love Wandell. I love Jalen Hyatt. I just feel like you need the quarterback that could get them the ball. That's really all it is. With the right quarterback, our receiver core, I feel like, could really step up. But if that's not where they want to go, maybe they don't get the quarterback, they want to stick with Daniel Jones, and okay, you might need that receiver that's going to make Daniel Jones look probably better than he will without him. But yeah, what do you have to say, Will?
I agree with that. I mean, one of my coworkers is very passionate about the Giants having the worst receiver core in the NFL. And I mean, honestly, if you look at what they did with Tyrod Taylor, like that's Tyrod Taylor. That guy's not a starter in the league, but they played very well. Look at Darius Slayton. He was inactive. What was it? Week 1 and 2 last year. And he led the team in receiving yards. I mean, Slayton might not be the flashiest wide receiver one. He's not the best wide receiver one, obviously, but he's still going to put up around 700 yards a year for you. That's pretty good for a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, something like that. And then you got Jalen Hyatt, who you didn't really see much from him last year because he didn't really get the ball. And then Wan'Dale Robinson came back after he was done rehabbing his ACL injury, and he tore it up. CeeDee Lamb even gave him props, which I thought was awesome. But this receiver core isn't as bad as everyone thinks it is. And if they have a quarterback let's say they do draft a quarterback, like elite quarterbacks can take a middle of the pack receiving core and make them look a lot better than they are because they're able to elevate a roster. That's what makes them elite. They can elevate they can elevate mid talent around them because they're that good. So yeah, I don't think this wide receiver core is that bad. And honestly, if let's say they stay at 6 and take something else. I don't know if they take wide receiver there. Let's say they take an offensive lineman. I don't know. I don't want that to happen. And they take a wide receiver in the second round. I mean, I'd be fine with that. I don't, like you said, the hit rate's not that high. Leggett, he's a name that I've heard a lot. Jalen Coker from Holy Cross in the late round, something like that. Just there's always wide receivers on the board. And this, like Ali said, this draft class is so stacked at the wide receiver position that you don't have to take one in the first round.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And this has been a trend in the NFL in recent years. There's been a lot of wide receiver talent in these draft class recently. And a lot of those players just get pushed down the board. Tommy Dixon just pointed out in the chat, I see Jalen Hyatt is going to be a wide receiver 2 for years. I believe that. I don't know if I'm ever going to come around to Jalen Hyatt being WR1. I need to see more from him before I get to that point. But as a solid wide receiver 2 for the next 5 to 7 years, absolutely see that ceiling, absolutely see that floor, to be completely honest. So, and that's just one example, right? The Giants got Jalen Hyatt in round 3. You mentioned it. The Rams got Puka Nacua in round 5. Tyreek Hill, the highest paid receiver in the NFL. Actually, not anymore because of Amon-Ra St. Brown just happened a few hours ago. But Amon-Ra St. Brown, 4th round draft pick. Amon-Ra, 5th round pick, and Tyreek Hill. List goes on and on. And I just love how deep this wide receiver class is. You mentioned your Holy Cross boy, Will. I'll mention my UCF boy, Javon Baker, a tremendous talent. That guy's going to be available probably on day 3 of this draft. You could see the wide receiver 1 potential there. And one of the points that you made, Allie, that I do really resonate with is why can't Darius Slayton be a WR1? What has he shown you that says that he can't do that? Because to me, if you look at that final stretch of the season, those final, I would say 7 weeks when it was basically Tommy DeVito and Tyrod Taylor, the guy was putting up yards. He was catching touchdowns. He was making plays game in and game out and was a big play threat, was an underneath threat, a run after the catch threat. He showed a pretty complete skill set when he finally was prioritized in the offense and thrown some accurate passes. So I always come back to it and I say the Giants actually have a little bit more talent in their receiving core than people like to give them credit for. They just got to get a quarterback that can get them freaking ball. I am all in. I'm pushing my chips in the middle of the table. If I'm Joe Shane, I am trying to trade up for Drake May. I'll take J.J. McCarthy at number 6 as well, though. I think that he is such a high floor, and I really like the way that he plays the game. I did a whole breakdown on him on a solo channel. But one other name you guys didn't mention. Yeah, you guys mentioned Xavier Leggett. Everybody who views this channel knows how much I love Xavier Leggett. I've been a fan of his for months. I've been calling him out. He's a first-round talent that's going to go on day 2. And again, that happens a lot. You see a lot of first-round talent. T. Higgins. You're going to tell me that he wasn't a first-round talent in that draft? He went on day 2.
T. Higgins, I will stand on my T. Higgins hill forever. Even when I was trying to get T. Higgins
future
to come
Giant
to
T. Higgins?
Okay, that is what I wanted, and that's what I've been saying forever. And Giants fans are trying to tell me that T. Higgins is not a wide receiver 1. They were trying to call him a Jamar Chase merchant, Joe Burrow merchant, as if they don't remember him and Trevor Lawrence and Clemson. Actually, you know what I want to happen? I want the Jaguars to trade for T. Higgins just so that we could get freaking Trevor Lawrence and T. Higgins again. Because saying that T. Higgins is not a wide receiver 1 and that he's just a Jamar Chase merchant or just a Joe Burrow merchant is completely false. T. Higgins is a stud. I absolutely love T. Higgins. And if T. Higgins were to become a Giant, that would probably be the happiest day of my life. I will be super ecstatic.
You know, I don't think that it's I don't think it's a coincidence that today, the day before the NFL draft, all of a sudden Trey Hendrickson from the Bengals requests that trade, and Adam Schefter reminds the world that T. Higgins also has requested a trade. It's not a coincidence. That is strategic from Adam Schefter. We see him do stuff like this every year before the draft. I think that he was really trying to let the NFL media know some blockbusters are going to go down tomorrow. Maybe T. Higgins could be involved in one of those, maybe to the Giants. Also, I'm sure everybody viewing, maybe not everybody, I know the two of you probably know about the legend of Pretty Ricky on Twitter, the guy who broke the Brian Burns trade well before it happened. He
also did the St.
broke
Brown
the
news.
Amon-Ra St. Brown deal yesterday, and it happened today. Well, he just tweeted recently that the Giants have made an offer on Brandon Ayuk. I don't know if you guys saw that. So let's keep an eye out on a trade for Ayuk. Maybe that happens tomorrow. And he also, in that tweet, speculated he doesn't think Joe Schoen would have called for Ayuk and tried to make that offer without thinking for sure that he was going to get a quarterback tomorrow. So who knows what's going to happen? It's going to be an exciting night. I can't wait. Well, I'll toss it back to you and get your take on some of the stuff that we mentioned. Anything that you kind of want to jump in on and discuss?
Honestly, I've been a big for the last 2 years T. Higgins to the Giants guy. I do like him a lot, and I thought he was going to be a first round pick when he was drafted in 2020. Obviously, he went, what was it, the 33rd pick. He was basically a first round pick, but I think he's a very good receiver. I think that he would obviously be the Giants wide receiver one at this point. He would solidify the core. You'd have Slayton, and then you'd have Slayton, him, Wandale, and Hyatt. And I think that's a pretty good receiving core. It's pretty young, in my opinion. So, yeah, and Brandon Ayuk, man, if they got Ayuk, I'd be pretty ecstatic with that. What would you give up for like a trade with Ayuk? What would that look like, Tony?
It would depend on what they give up in a trade for a quarterback if they make that move. And listen, it's possible that this could play out in the opposite fashion of what we expect. Maybe the Giants traded down and draft a quarterback, have extra capital, and send some of those picks for an Ayuk. That's also a possibility. We've heard a lot about them liking Michael Penix Jr. Maybe they really do like him. Maybe they don't take him at 6. Maybe they trade down 10 spots and they take him at 16 per se, and then they draft him there, and then they go ahead and trade a pick for Ayuk. That's just an example. I'm not saying I do or don't want that to happen, but it's just a possibility. So you got to keep that in mind. This could go one of a million different ways. What would I give up for Ayuk, though? I fear that a team out there is going to be willing to give up a late first-round pick. Think like the Baltimore Ravens, who could really use a weapon and have the 30th overall pick. I think that would persuade a team like the 49ers, especially sending him to another conference. But maybe the New York Giants could get by here with something similar to what the Texans just did for Stephon Diggs, a future second-round pick, which is something that I mentioned a lot on the channel before. I think that Ayuk, while it's starting to heat up now and seeming like he could get traded tomorrow, it's also possible that he could not get traded tomorrow and not get traded until after the draft concludes. So then you're talking 2025 draft capital. So maybe you're going a 25 second round pick, again, like the Texans did for Diggs. So I would go as high as a second for him if it's a future second. I wouldn't give up this year's second again because of how deep this wide receiver class is and because I think the Giants can totally land a wide receiver talent in the second round on a rookie contract. But if you're going into the 2025 draft capital, I would go as high as a second round pick for Brandon Ayuk. Before I go ahead and ask Allie the same question, Throwing Shade did leave us a super chat. Thank you very much. Why not just take pass on a QB in the draft, fill out other positions, and try to sign Brock Purdy or Dak Prescott next offseason? Dak, you belong here, baby. Come home. No, I'm not going to get into all that. Listen, the problem with a scenario like that, in my opinion, Throwing Shade, and again, thank you for the super chat, but passing on a quarterback based on future contingencies is just too much of a risk. The Giants don't know for sure that they'll have a top 10 draft pick next year. They don't know for sure that they'll have enough cap space to sign a quarterback. They don't know for sure if Dak Prescott or Brock Purdy are going to be on the market. So all of those what ifs versus a definitely in the top 10 pick range right now and able to get a quarterback, you got to take the definitely. You can't plan for what ifs in the future, unfortunately. So that'll be my take on that. You guys know, the two of you know, I do really like Dak Prescott as a quarterback. And I think with Dak Prescott, the Giants would be a playoff team, a good one too. But you just can't plan for things like that. When you got an opportunity to draft a QB like the Giants have right now, you got to make the most of it.
I just have to say something because the chat is making me mad. In what way is T. Higgins like Kenny Galladay? Like,
Oh,
that's what I don't get. He got injured, came back, and had an insane catch against the Vikings. I feel like T. Higgins has not given me anything like he's Kenny Galladay. I want to know, where is that narrative coming from? In what way is T. Higgins Kenny Galladay? I feel like when Kenny Galladay got hurt, you could tell that he was on a decline because that injury did set him back. T. Higgins' injury did not set him back. He came back and was playing like that wide receiver one with Jake Browning. Like, come on. Don't do that. I just
yeah.
had to throw that out there because I was seeing that and that was making me mad. And onto your take. Prior to my fantasy year with CeeDee Lamb, I was a big Dak Prescott hater. Only because, Giants fan. You can ask Anthony. I got at him all the time for loving Dak Prescott because I just was not a Dak fan. And then I sat there, I'm having CeeDee Lamb. I'm watching like the games now. I actually had fun watching Dallas, which is kind of like shame for me as a Giants fan to say that, but I did. The Giants sucked. I was having fun watching Dallas. I was having fun watching Dak sling it to the point where I had the full Cowboy experience. In my head, I was like, damn, I know we always clown the Cowboys for saying this is our year, but damn, this could really be their year. Like, I was fully feeling it. I thought the Cowboys are going to go all the way. First round the playoffs go. I make my bets. I'm like, I'm telling you, Cowboys are going to be Green Bay. My aunt and my uncle are Cowboy fans. I was cheering on Dallas with them only to get embarrassed. And I was like, wow, I literally just had the whole entire Cowboy experience. But I think Dak doesn't get enough credit for what he brought to that team. And I saw something earlier. I don't know exactly how true it is. Remembering off the top of my head about Jerry Jones saying something about how he gave Dak the best weapons, but he can't do that this year. And people are trying to say that maybe Jerry Jones is like showing that he doesn't have any faith in Dak Prescott. And now Dak has to make it happen without having all those weapons. And I think Dak can. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens this year with Jerry Jones seemingly losing faith in his QB1. So maybe he could be a Giant. Who knows?
Which is crazy.
I think Jerry Jones is getting old and impatient. He wants to see his team win a Super Bowl before he passes, and it's causing him to be a little impatient with Dak Prescott. But Dak Prescott so clearly isn't the problem to me, and I know that maybe is a hot take. I'm sure there's plenty in the chat that think Dak Prescott is the problem. I'm not one of those people. I got flamed when I took him as my Dynasty League quarterback last offseason. Man, I scored more points than anybody in the entire league, and a lot of that was because of Dak Prescott. So I saw that one coming. That was a perfect year for Dak to have a monster year, and I do think he's going to have another big season upcoming. But, Will, I do just want to kind of get your take to kind of wrap up that point about quarterbacks planning for those kind of contingencies, and maybe if you feel the same way where you just can't plan ahead for an upcoming draft class or an upcoming free agency class.
Yeah, we talked about it on after we recorded Fireside Rangers. Like, you can't just say, "Oh, let's look to next. Like, let's take something else. Let's take a wide receiver this year and look to let's take a quarterback next year," because you don't know how that draft class is going to come out next year. So you gotta. I mean, what this draft class is this year. I know it's a lot of boomer bust. I know people say that Drake May is boomer bust. Michael Penix. Jaden Daniels. I'm just blanking for a second, but I feel like
Allie's made a couple nasty faces at Michael Penix, so we might have to get a take on him in a second here.
You know what? I'm gonna start with Michael Penix right now because I agree with you, Allie. I am not a fan. One of my good friends is a Broncos fan. He really wants him. I think injury history is really big. I hope he proves me wrong because he probably is a very good dude. But I'm not a big Michael Penix guy. But I feel like this is the year you kind of have to take a quarterback, and I want Drake May. I'm just gonna go ahead and say it right now. I want Drake May. If we traded up for 3 tomorrow and got Drake May, I would. I can't say it on a live stream, but I would be very happy. I would be very. I'd run around outside and be very happy.
Yeah. I'm not gonna lie, Anthony is the reason I feel like I love Drake May as much as I do. I feel like it was his agenda of Drake May that I was like, okay, put him on my radar, and I feel like now I'm a big Drake May person as well. And I think that's really one of the only quarterbacks that I would be really excited for. I'm happy he likes JJ now. The last time the three of us were on his stream, he told me JJ was Mac Jones.
I remember that.
JJ is very far from Mac Jones. I was ill-informed. I hadn't watched him enough, but once I really dove into the All-22, and believe me, I watched plenty of it this offseason for McCarthy, for May, Caleb, all of these guys. But McCarthy's really caught my eye because there was so much more than the box scores would suggest, than the stats would suggest. Like there was just a lot to dive into. And not only like when you watch him play, you can find his flaws, you can do the breakdowns, and you can see certain things that will hold him back at the next level. But you also could find a few performances that would show you like that's an NFL arm and that's an NFL throw, and that's routine to him. And you can't say the same about a lot of the quarterback prospects that have come out in recent years. So you could see the upside with McCarthy for sure. And you could see why an NFL scout would fall in love with him. And I've made this take before on the show, and I'll kind of repeat it. I don't believe that McCarthy has had this meteoric rise in draft stock. I think that NFL fans and NFL media were very behind on where the NFL was with McCarthy. I think if you take a look, put yourself in the shoes of a 65-year-old NFL general manager. Think back on what quarterbacks have looked like for the last 20 years, the best quarterbacks. They've come from all of these different pro-style offenses. They've been 21 years old. They've had strong arms, and they've won a lot of games. Those are the Peyton Mannings if you want to be the 65-year-old GM. You'll look at J.J. McCarthy and say that right there is what I've always been told to scout in a quarterback. But the game has changed. So now people value different things, and they value guys like Drake May, and they value guys like Caleb Williams because they can do all this off-script stuff. But if you think back to 20 years ago, who would have been the number one overall pick in this draft? It's J.J. McCarthy, probably, if you go through that exercise. So that's where I kind of thought the NFL has probably always held this first-round grade and high opinion of McCarthy, but fans of the NFL weren't there yet, and now they're all catching up because they're looking at the box score and seeing it from, or looking at the All-22 and seeing it from a GM's perspective of what they've had in the past. So I think McCarthy is a really good player, and I think that an NFL team is definitely in love with him enough to take him inside the top 10 picks. We'll see if it ends up being the New York Giants. Maybe the Giants do end up going receiver. It'll be really interesting. But this is a good quarterback class. I don't know if it's 2020. Maybe it's 2018. There's a variance to it. But we'll ultimately find out in 2 to 3 years. Were the fans right? Were the GMs right? It's going to be a lot of fun to see over the next couple seasons.
It will be. I'm just going to give in my Penix take right now. I'm not a Penix girl, literally at all. And honestly, it doesn't even have to do with his injury history, even though that's a big part. I think he stayed presumably healthy this year. I think the year before maybe he didn't get hurt. So it's like my thing with him is his accuracy, and I feel like he isn't accurate as much as I would want him to be. I know he has great arm strength. He has an arm fine, but he's struggled with his accuracy basically his whole entire college career. And I know people could say like, "Oh, but that's a prospect. Like you can fix that." But it's like if it hasn't been fixed yet, then it's like, will it ever actually be fixed? I feel like I've seen what Michael Penix could be as a quarterback. I feel like with other quarterbacks, I don't feel like they reached their ceiling. But for me, I feel like Michael Penix has. I feel like I saw what I had to see. I wasn't impressed by Penix in the games that I watched him play. It's not the quarterback that I want. So
Yeah. I mean,
yeah. I think there's a lot to like with Penix. I don't want to completely discredit, the guy's got a freaking cannon of an arm. He throws a great deep ball.
Yeah.
He throws well outside the numbers. It's throwing across the middle of the field and throwing outside of the pocket. Those are the things that really concern me. And not only do I think they're going to limit his ceiling, they're going to limit an NFL offense's ceiling because you have to scheme around certain deficiencies that he has in his game. Some quarterbacks you have to scheme around. And that's also part of my feelings for Jaden Daniels. I think his inability to throw over the middle of the field at times and tendency to take off after the first read. There are certain quarterbacks that you have to build a scheme around. Sometimes that works. You'll see Lamar Jackson had a whole scheme built around him, and it's one of the best offensive schemes in the NFL. But you'll also see oftentimes these schemes get built around quarterbacks to mask their deficiencies, not maximize their strengths. And then you get a lot of problems, and those players don't always end up panning out. And that's ultimately my biggest fear with Michael Penix.
Yeah. And I mean, oh, sorry. No, you can talk, Allie.
What I was going to say is that's my thing with JJ though, because this was not my first year watching JJ McCarthy. I watched JJ McCarthy his previous season as well. And I feel like instead of trying to mask the things that JJ couldn't do, he was actually working on improving those things. And I saw how much he improved in between 1 year. And that's what got me excited about JJ. And that's why I think he could be successful, because I know he could fix everything he needs to fix, because I've seen him do it. It's like, okay, if he's struggling in one area, he's going to work to do it. And that's just something that Michigan did for him. He wasn't just, oh, I can't do this, so I'm not going to try to work on it. Go ahead, try to what Anthony was saying, like, try to scheme around me, like, "Oh, if I can't do this, don't make me do it." It's like JJ was working towards it, and he got better. Little things, like even with him throwing on the run, there used to be things where he would stare down his receivers, and it was just, "Okay, let me throw it here," or he wouldn't throw it at all. He would just run out of bounds. This time, it's like he could do his no-look pass and throw it. Like, he could do those little things, and yeah, I just think JJ's gonna improve, and I'm really excited to see JJ McCarthy, especially if he's on the Vikings. If he's on the Vikings,
Oh, dude.
then you guys know
Or
right
especially
now.
if he's on the Giants, right? I mean,
Yeah, I
especially
mean,
if he's on the Giants.
True, but I have like PTSD. I do not. Not saying that I don't want to see him on the Giants, but like I just don't want another year where it's like, okay, our offensive line is like kind of trash again. JJ's getting hit, and then it's just a whole bunch of JJ is Daniel Jones. Like that is what I don't want to happen.
yeah, I feel like that's gonna that's what's gonna happen with like any quarterback we take. I think they're just gonna there's instantly gonna be compared to Daniel Jones as soon as one thing goes wrong. They will be like they will be nailed to the stake and just tomatoes thrown at them because
It's going to happen with any of the quarterbacks they take, though.
Yeah.
You know, JJ McCarthy more so than the rest because
Yeah.
he is the most polarizing prospect, I think, in the first round of this draft. But any quarterback that the Giants take is going to be under a microscope, under a hot light. It's going to be under scrutiny every play that they make. Even the good plays that they make, it won't be good enough. You know, that's how it's going to be. And so the Giants, a large part of their process pre-draft needs to have been, how do these guys respond to that? How do they react when they make a good throw and it's not good enough for Giants fans? Because nothing's ever good enough for Giants fans. That's what makes us such good fans. And that's what's made this team so good in the past. We were talking about this as well, Will, when you kept yapping to me after Fireside Rangers earlier. We were talking about how
I was doing that.
I know I was yapping too. We were talking about how
I
it's
feel
like the
left
standards
out.
have dropped. The standards have dropped recently for Giants fans, right? Like we used to be
I'm
really
disgusted
tough
by
on
Giants
Eli
fans.
Manning. Eli Manning used to get crap no matter what. Even when he threw, I remember that one Saints game where he threw six touchdown passes, I think, in that game, and they lost. Everybody blamed Eli. They didn't blame, the punter who let up that terrible play, Brad Wing at the time. I don't know.
Oh
if you
my
guys remember this
God.
game.
Don't even get me started with Brad Wing. Sorry.
Yeah, we won't get into that one. But that's just my point, though. Even when Eli Manning would turn in great performances, Giants fans would just hang on to the 1 to 2 bad plays that he made, and they would be like, "We got to move on. You're not good enough anymore, Eli." Yeah. It's not the same anymore. We get mediocre performances out of players now, and Giants fans praise them and say, "This is potential. We can develop this. This is going to be a superstar." It's just not the case. We got to be realistic here. I think people don't understand how good they had it when Eli Manning was the quarterback. I miss him.
Look at the Tom Coughlin era. At the end of that, we would go 8-8, 7-9. No. 7-10, like almost every at the
a couple 5-11s in there too.
Yeah,
but
5-11s, and people would be pissed when we were 8-8 because we were a game short of making the playoffs. Now we go 2-13, not even 2-13, like 2-15, and everyone's like, "Oh yeah, we get a top 5 pick." All right, great, we get a top 5 pick. We've had that every single year since 2018. Great.
Hasn't worked out for us.
I want to make the playoffs. All these top 5 picks, all these top 10 picks, and we're still going like 2-15. Like at some point, enough.
Ultimately, the reality there, though, is that the NFL has just changed, and the way that people consume NFL media has changed, where now everybody wants it to be all or nothing. So if you're not making the playoffs, you want a high draft pick if you're a fan, or at least that's how most fans are. It's kind of like the culture of being a team that hangs on and maybe makes the playoffs every single year has died out. Fans don't want that anymore. And so ultimately you'll see them root for losses and hope for higher draft picks. But at the end of the day, the best teams in the NFL right now were not built with high overall draft picks necessarily. Like the Chiefs were in the middle zone for a very long time before they got Patrick Mahomes and became a great team. The Eagles as well were in the middle zone for a while. There is a lot of value in being a team that's a fringe playoff team for several years who then gets it right. That middle zone, you'll see a lot of people who dive into analytics and stuff on Twitter. And I love analytics, but this is the wrong way to use it. They'll dive into analytics and say, you're stuck in quarterback hell or purgatory if you're picking 20th or 15th overall. You should either be picking first or 32nd. That's just not how it works. It's not the reality of it. That's not accurate to the way that the best teams in the NFL have been built. And I think that's something that fans have lost sight of in recent years. And if anybody has takes on that, I'll let you get to it. But first, I got to say, Thank you once again to Throwing Shade for another super chat. When is Spencer Rattler expected to be drafted? If you're going by public NFL media consensus and boards, you're going early day 3, so about the 4th round. If you're going by rumor mill and where NFL teams like him, you're going as early as the 2nd round. So based on that, I would probably project him somewhere in the 3rd. Ultimately, we'll see, though, because there are some QB needy teams that I could definitely see reaching in the 2nd.
Yeah, I could too. I mean, man, Spencer Rattler. I remember when Spencer Rattler first came into Oklahoma. He was supposed to be like that big name guy. I think he was supposed
Projected
to be
number 1 pick, man.
Yeah, was it this year he was supposed to be projected number 1 or last year?
It would have
when he
been
first
last
came in?
year.
Yeah,
He was
last
supposed
year.
to come out as a junior, but his
Yeah,
career just didn't happen that way.
yeah, and then he got replaced by Caleb Williams, and now Caleb Williams is wow, that's actually like full circle. Caleb Williams is now going to be taken first overall after, so yeah, I think Rattler, I think he had a pretty solid year, I guess, last year with South Carolina. He actually was able to throw to my boy Juice Wells, JMU guy who went to USC. But yeah, I think there's a lot of QB needy teams, and Spencer Rattler will probably be taken earlier than expected.
I think so too.
Yeah. And a lot of mocks I've done, I've taken him in the 3rd round, but that's like if he makes it to the 3rd round. I would love to get Rattler in the 3rd round if it could happen, but
yeah, to me though, I'd be okay with if the Giants ended up taking Rattler on day 2, but I really feel like, again, it's coming down to the statistics. This is like where I like analytics. When you're looking at the hit rate of positions, if you're not taking a day 1 quarterback, do you really want to take one at all? Like, you're taking one in the 1st round, you've got 70% of the best quarterbacks in the NFL were taken in the 1st round. The other 30% were taken outside of the 1st round. You want to bank on being part of the 30% rather than part of the 70%? I don't. I would rather take one in the 1st round, whether you're talking about any of the top 4 guys plus Michael Penix, and even if Bo Nix ends up going in the 1st round, because he's a 1st round draft pick, he's on a 5-year contract rather than a 4-year contract. Technically, he has a higher chance of panning out than anybody taken on day 2. So if the Giants don't take a quarterback in the 1st round, I'm not going to hold out hope that they take Nix in the 2nd round or Rattler in the 3rd, nothing like that, or Pratt in the 4th or 5th, wherever these guys go. I love Jordan Travis. I don't want him on the Giants either. It's either 1st round quarterback or you flesh out this roster, you add a bunch of talent, and you try and hope that you're in a position to get a quarterback next offseason. And again, that's not what I want to plan for, because they've got a chance to get one right now. So I think that they better do it.
that's true.
Yeah. You take the chance right now. If you have to trade up. I know we talked about it earlier, but I don't want to wait. Like you said, the hit rate on quarterbacks outside the 1st round it's very low, and I don't want to be part of that 30%. I want to be part of the 70%. So I'd rather take a QB in the 1st round, and if not, like you said, flush out the roster, get talent around it, and hope you're in a position to draft one next year if that's the case.
Yeah, I just want to win football games.
Yeah,
And I'm a big Daniel Jones girl. I feel like that was like the basis of me growing on Twitter, was the fact that I did love Daniel Jones. But for me, it's like I'm not even going to make any excuses for him at this point, not even going to talk about his level of play. I am really concerned about the fact that he is coming off of a torn ACL. I feel like usually those take, a year to get back to yourself fully. That
9
concerns
months,
me.
I'd say, probably 9 months. Especially nowadays, sports medicine is really advanced. So
True.
9 months, I'd say.
But yet, still concerning. 2 major neck injuries. Like, I don't want to take that risk now. And I feel bad because I love DJ, but it's like, okay, I want to win football games. If they need a quarterback. I don't know. Are you confident in our quarterback room?
Part of the problem with Jones and this injury is, and this is something not a lot of fans really talk about, you have to get ready for the regular season, and that doesn't mean being ready for training camp, because that's what he told the media, and a lot of Giants fans will rebuttal and say he'll be ready for training camp, or he'll be ready for preseason, and then he can go into the regular season fully ready. And it's like, But what about OTAs? What about voluntary workouts? I know he was there, but how much is he able to do in those voluntary workouts? What is he able to do during OTAs when they're installing a new blocking scheme on the field and live reps? Can't do anything. So you're going to have these other quarterbacks that are in here, whether you're talking a rookie or you're talking Tommy DeVito plus Drew Lock, they're going to be practicing the new nuanced changes to the offense. And this issue that I'm discussing compounds when you take into account that Brian Dable might be taking over play calling duties, which will inevitably result in minor changes to the playbook itself. They're installing changes to this offense. They do it every year. They always are looking to improve in one way or another. Daniel Jones is missing valuable practice time, even if he's ready for training camp. I know training camp is when the pads come on. It's when things really start to ramp up and they really start to install the nitty-gritty of the offense. But he's still playing from behind on a lot of that stuff. He is missing certain reps. He is missing opportunities to work out with receivers. This time last year, I believe Daniel Jones was out in Arizona working out with wide receivers. He can't do that right now. Other quarterbacks can. He can't. If the Giants draft a quarterback tomorrow, next month, he can be working out with those receivers. Daniel Jones can't be. That's another part of it. There's about an extra, I guess, month of practice that Jones misses before practices even begin, basically. And that's something that a lot of Giants fans don't seem to take into account, but I take that into account. I think that's something that's going to cause him to be very rusty at the start of the regular season, missing out on that valuable practice time, compounded by the fact that he needs to get used to having a knee that he's injured before and playing on that thing, because that is a mental barrier that plagues a lot of NFL players. So a lot of reason to be concerned about Daniel Jones's history here.
Yeah, I don't want a rusty Daniel Jones on the field.
No. I mean,
that is awful.
Think about a healthy Daniel Jones. Now you got a rusty Daniel Jones. Like that, you bring up a good point. Like players don't just automatically, they don't just heal and automatically get back to the field. Like, what is Daniel Jones been doing anything football related these past couple months while he's been rehabbing? Maybe not. Who knows?
He has been throwing, but he's been throwing mostly sitting in a chair, which again is to continue to make sure that his arm is in place for the season. But again, he's still rebuilding the lower half of his body.
Yeah.
His footwork is going to be changed, like he's going to have to relearn his footwork and know when to plant and when to bail in the pocket and how to cut on that knee. There's so much nuance that goes into this. And I know that we've seen a lot of quarterbacks recover from these injuries and have a lot of success. We've seen quarterbacks that haven't recovered from them and haven't had success. And we don't know whether or not Daniel Jones is going to be part of the successful group or the unsuccessful group. Yeah. And that mystery is something that if I'm Joe Schoen and Brian Dable, I am not banking on. I am not putting my future into that mystery. I will go into a different position or a different direction here and try to save my job if I'm Brian Dable and Joe Schoen. Ultimately, I think the only way you do that is by taking a quarterback in the first round.
Yeah. I mean, look at Sam Bradford. He had an ACL injury, then, was healthy. Injured it again.
Sam Bradford, nice call out. That's a throwback. I haven't thought not thought of Sam Bradford in like 5 years.
Dude, that was me and my friend. What was it? It was like Madden 11, and we would always draft him when we were drafting franchises for some reason. And my first year doing fantasy football, I actually took him with my first round pick. I don't know why.
What a selection there!
I know it was great, but you're not always going to get like that Tom Brady ACL injury, and he's going to come back and. Well, he was already the GOAT before that, but he tore his ACL, comes back even stronger. But you just don't know, and especially with Daniel Jones, like we said, 2 neck injuries, now an ACL tear.
Yes,
it's just there's too many question marks. Where at this point, you're better off just moving on.
It's like a toxic relationship. It's like neither person wants to let go, but it's like you have to let go. Like that's it. It's done. Hate to move on, but. It. I'm sorry. That's literally what it is. I feel like some fans don't want to let go of DJ, holding on to his rookie season from 6-7 years ago now. It's been how long since Daniel Jones has been a rookie, holding on to flashes. They're trying to put the narrative that Mara doesn't want to let him go, but it's like it's been too long. Poor timing, new regime. Sometimes you just need to break up.
And what has he had? He's had, was it 2 healthy seasons? Like Eli Manning went 256 games straight starting. That man battled like through injuries. Like I remember he had bloody heads and he would still play. And the best ability is availability, and we're just not seeing that with Daniel Jones besides 2 years of his career. So you need someone that's going to stay on the field. I don't know if that's going to be Daniel Jones now that we, talking about his injury history.
Yeah.
So
Neck injuries are super concerning. I feel like
Yeah.
that's more concerning to me than the knee at this point.
I agree.
Neck
David
injury.
Wilson, he had a neck injury. He had him retire, and he was pretty good.
Yeah. It's just,
Yeah, the only
neck injury is
counterpoint that
scary.
I'll make to the neck injury one is that Daniel Jones did say in his presser recently that it was just a stinger, which is a very common, that is a common football injury. So he's trying to say that it was completely unrelated to his original injury that he had surgery for in 2021. But of course, he would say that. I will just point that out, not to be a cynic, but it is
Even that
a cynical
injury was
world,
like,
so.
I remember that they were so like secretive with his injury, and I feel like that's why I can't trust what is being said. I remember that 2021 season. It was he had the neck, and then every week it was like, oh, he's questionable, oh, he's questionable, oh, he's questionable.
Yeah.
They weren't telling us anything that happened. They didn't even tell us he really had neck surgery, if I'm correct. They didn't really. It was like all like hush hush, keep it a secret. And now it's like, okay, now it feels like the same thing all over again. I feel like they're just being super secretive of what the injury actually was, and that's what's making me nervous. What happened?
Yeah,
Like,
what really is it?
Yeah, like what happened?
Listen, there's a lot of nerves to have with this whole Daniel Jones situation, and I think that's it's going to be the talk of the town tomorrow when the Giants are on the clock. I mean, when you're watching NFL Network, ESPN, whatever you watch, that's pretty much all they're going to be talking about. You can bank on that until the Giants actually make their pick. Whether they're going receiver, quarterback, it's all going to tie back into the conversation about Daniel Jones one way or another. But let's go briefly and flip over to the other side of the ball. We've been on a little bit of a negative path here. Let's talk about the pass rush and how we're feeling about it going forward, because we've got the Kayvon Thibodeau enjoyer herself in here, but now we've got Brian Burns. Are you a Burns enthusiast? Are you a Burns enjoyer? How are you feeling about the way that this defensive line is going to look?
I love our defensive line. I feel like it is so nasty. I absolutely love it. I can't wait to see them absolutely kill quarterbacks next season. I'm so ready for it. That has been the only thing that has kept me a little like okay with our secondary being as weak as it is. I feel like having that front line as dominant as it can be, especially you have Dexter Lawrence, Brian Bird, Kayvon Thibodeau, if they play to their potential, that is scary. And I just saw Kayvon did his little clap back video today on Instagram where he had the WFAN guy saying like, oh, he hasn't shown us like blah blah blah, and Kayvon had his little voice clip in his video and was showing his highlights, and I feel like that is what I like to see. I feel like Kayvon is going to come super 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 strong next season.
I think Kayvon's gonna. I think he's really gonna benefit from having Brian Burns on the other side of him, dude. I thought it was just a rumor when I first heard that we were gonna get him, and then all of a sudden I was actually in North Carolina at my friend's house, and her older sister's boyfriend is a Panthers fan, and he was just raving about Burns. I'm very excited for it. I don't know. I mean, I think the last time I can remember we had two pass rushers that can do what they did was Olivier Vernon and JPP in 2016, and they were good that year. That defense was good with Snacks Harrison. So I'm so excited for that. That was a big trade, and they gave him a big 5-year, $150 million contract. So I'm very excited to see what they can do, what they're gonna do with that D line this year. I'm excited.
I did a stream literally last week with a Panthers fan, and he was so distraught. Like, he was so heartbroken that they got rid of Brian Burns, and he was not having a fun time. I was just roasting the Panthers the whole time, but I'm excited.
I like this comment, though, from Jeffrey Wheeler. Dude, we got to get someone like Chris Jenkins in the draft, and this line is going to be legit. It's a sneaky need that not enough Giants fans talk about, in my opinion, interior defensive line, because we've got Dexter Lawrence, which is great. But who's playing next to Dexter Lawrence? I don't know how much you guys believe in the likes of Jordan Riley and DJ Davidson. I know that they have their cult following. They have their fans. I think that they're solid depth pieces. I'm not going to bank on them being solid starters. I think that defensive line, considering how deep this draft class is, it's a sneaky one. Not enough talk about it, but there are a lot of good interior defenders in this draft class. I would really like to see the Giants go with the defensive lineman. Maybe round 3, maybe 4, somewhere in that range. I think you can find yourself a really good player that can develop into an eventual starter, maybe even as early as round 2 with a guy like Chris Jenkins. Again, love the potential of the defensive line, as you guys mentioned, with obviously our edge rushers. I also want to point out that having two really good starting edge rushers like we do now should benefit Azeez Ojulari. He should be a very good rotational pass rusher.
Yeah.
He's on the field less, means less opportunities for injuries, means more opportunity to just go out there and get after the quarterback, not have to play in the running game where he's not as strong. So I think that he's going to benefit as well. And then, of course, we know Dexter Lawrence will always be a monster. I just think we need more on the defensive line, though. After losing Leonard Williams, A'Shawn Robinson was a good replacement. A'Shawn Robinson, low-key got a bag. I think it was with the Panthers. He got some money elsewhere. I don't know how that happened. The Giants
really?
never get into that money.
He did. He got a bag.
Wow, good for him.
Yeah,
I
good for him.
I feel like I didn't really hear his name last year much, but he was solid.
He was solid. So
Nah.
I don't know, though.
like
How are
Chris
the
Jenkins
Giants
a
going to
lot.
replace that? That's my question mark, is what do the Giants do to replace A'Shawn Robinson? I don't think there's really a clear-cut answer unless they prioritize it in the draft here.
Yeah. I like Chris Jenkins. I took him in my mock when I did that stream.
I'll be honest, I have no clue who that is.
Michigan defensive lineman, really good. He's a son of a former NFL player, also named Chris Jenkins, who is really good, like multi-Pro Bowl player. Vikings.
Well, I mean, I feel like Michigan always produces pretty good D-line guys or just guys.
Fun fact, Michigan has the most prospects in this year's
they
draft class.
Really? How many?
I think it's 18.
Wow.
Yeah.
Damn.
So or at least they had 18 at the combine, which was a record. That means that they could have more than 18 eligible for the draft. So maybe some guys go undrafted as well. But yeah, loaded up on Michigan talent this offseason in this draft class. Maybe the Giants will take a Michigan player in the first round to throw some passes. Who knows? We'll see. Where are we on offensive line, guys? How are we feeling about that? Because I've seen a few people in the chat throw out the name Joe Alt. I've seen actually on that note, I'm going to give you guys my favorite play for tomorrow's draft in terms of sports betting. Shout out to Fireside Bets. Go check that out if you haven't already. Off tangent here. But tomorrow for the draft, if you want to make some bets, this is a flyer. It's high odds, but you throw down just a little cash on this one. Joe Alt to be the first non-quarterback taken is at plus 1,000. If quarterbacks go off the board 1, 2, 3, 4, the 5th overall pick is held by the Chargers. I am betting on them taking Joe Alt over a wide receiver.
I agree.
So that could absolutely happen.
Wow.
All it takes is someone trades up to 4 for McCarthy. Boom, Joe Alt at 5. You just made 10 times your money. So that's my favorite play for tomorrow. I'm going to be locking that one in.
Wait, so if you put down $100 on them taking Joe on that thing, you make $1,000?
That's how betting works.
Oh, dude, I wish I was plus 1,000. I wish I was 21. Damn.
You want a bookie? I'll make the bet.
Hey, this is illegal. Don't do this. It's not legal.
Yeah, Allie, don't do that. It's illegal.
21 plus, bet responsibly. But no, seriously, that's my favorite play for any listeners that like that bet. I think that it makes sense. Again, I wouldn't put a ton of money on it just because, Marvin Harrison Jr. is likely going at number 4 or maybe Malik Neighbors, whoever. But if you want to take a little low-key flyer of a play, that's the one I'm taking. But all right, let's talk about it. Joe Alt, J.C. Latham, any of these offensive linemen, maybe at 6, maybe if the Giants trade down, as we mentioned earlier. Allie, do you think offensive line should be on the table, or are you in the camp where offensive line in the first round is just not a wise selection for the Giants?
I don't want offensive line in the first round at all. And I don't want them so much so that I feel like I haven't even done any homework on offensive linemen. I don't want it. I know we don't have Bobby Johnson anymore, which is great, but we don't have a good history of just developing offensive linemen. And I feel like at this point, I don't want to waste any more time or like another prime draft pick on another offensive lineman, regardless of who it is. I don't want to see it. I know we had our signings in the offseason. At this point, I just want to see what the rotation we have now. Not saying the offensive line is fixed right now, but I'm not spending another first round pick. How many times have we spent a first round pick on offensive linemen? And it did not work out. And Evan Neal's looking like he's not working out right now. I don't want to do it again.
Yeah, and not only first-round picks, but day 2 picks as well. I mean, Josh Azeedu, are we going to develop the kid, or are we just going to keep sending him to the bottom of the roster? He's got talent. You got to develop these guys.
I love Azeedu, and I think I did an article where I basically came at the Giants for failing him this year. Like they
mismanaged him.
Yeah.
They tried to make him fill an Andrew Thomas void, which I felt wasn't fair at all. Had him crying in the locker room when Daniel Jones got hurt, trying to say that it was his fault. Like he was blaming himself. And I was like, bro, that's not your fault. It's the Giants' fault for putting you at left tackle when you shouldn't have been there.
He practiced the entire offseason at guard and then on a whim they just threw him out there at tackle. I
Yeah,
don't
they
know
failed
why
him.
they did that, and
Oh my God.
I don't know who that came down to. I mean, obviously Dable signs off on the final decisions, but I don't know whose idea that was, whether it was Kafka, Johnson, Dable, whoever made that decision. They really screwed up there. I'm worried that they've ruined Azizu's confidence and stunted his growth and
Definitely.
development pretty badly. But
100%.
before I ask your take on offensive line, Will, again, as I cut your head off here with the graphics, Van Markle asked, could MHJ fall to us? And I'm going to say yes. I think there's a really good chance that Marvin Harrison Jr. could potentially fall to the Giants at 6. Again, following that same train of thought here, 1, 2, 3, 4 being quarterbacks. If somebody trades up for McCarthy at number 4, number 5, you have Joe Alt. Number 6, Marvin Harrison Jr. to the New York Giants. It's actually not outside of the realm of possibility. In fact, it's very much within the realm of possibility. If the Giants
Definitely.
don't get a quarterback, they've got a really good chance of landing Marvin Harrison Jr. But I'll also throw this out there. If MHJ is on the board at number 6, somebody is going to be willing to give up an absolute disgusting haul of draft capital for the New York Giants if they want to move down and not take MHJ. And I can't be upset about that one either. So, yes, it's possible. We'll see if it happens. Again, he's very likely to go number 4. It's going to depend on the quarterbacks, though, and how eager teams are to trade up for him. If anybody has anything to say on that, you can jump it in. If not, Will, I do want to get your take on offensive line. Allie, what's up?
What I will say, everyone is saying that the Chargers are going to take a wide receiver, and I feel like some people don't know the state of the Chargers roster. The Chargers have way more needs than just a wide receiver.
Yep.
And I think the narrative going around, like, oh, they're definitely going to go wide receiver because they don't have Mike Williams, they don't have Keenan Allen. That is far from the truth. They do need offensive linemen. The Chargers roster is disgusting. They need to get Herbert some help. It is not good. Like, everything about it right now is not I feel so bad for Justin Herbert because I'm a big Justin Herbert girl and he's always getting hate, and I feel like it's just going to intensify because that roster has just got blown up. So it's very possible that we could get a receiver falling to us just because the Chargers have so many needs. It's not just a wide receiver.
Yeah, I mean, their offensive line's in tatters right now. So
yeah, it's bad. And then before I give it to you, Will, the last point that I will make, though, on my Joe Alt kind of flyer bet here for him to go 5 and be the first non-quarterback taken, to hedge that bet, what I would suggest is that you take, I think it's plus 700 for JC. I think it's actually plus 1,400. I got that wrong. For JC Latham to be the first offensive lineman taken, I would take that because I actually think there's a strong chance that the Chargers might go Latham instead because he's a natural right tackle and he just plays with a real mean streak like Jim Harbaugh likes. So that's just one idea that I'll throw out there to hedge that bet if you want to take that one. But, Will, let me hear it. Offensive line, what's your take?
I mean, if it comes down to it, will I be happy? No. Will I be upset? Maybe. Depends. Look, I mean, the last 3 offensive linemen they've taken in the first round, 2 of them have one of them's on their way to be a bust, and one of them was a bust and actually moved to guard, Eric Flowers. Andrew Thomas was the only one that they hit on. Like, you can't just always fall back on offensive linemen and take an offensive lineman in the first round, because at a certain point you just got to be like, all right, you know what? We can't develop offensive linemen, and we can't. So why keep taking them and ruining them? So, I mean, like I said, if it comes down to that, maybe, I don't know. It really, like, there would have to be something that goes wrong with, like, the receivers are gone. I don't know what happens. Just something has to go wrong for me to want to take an offensive lineman at 6.
I didn't even want Evan Neal. I was an icky girl.
I liked Ike Mekwonu too. That man was violent coming out of
We were just talking about that earlier. Will
loved him. He was my favorite player in that draft class. I loved him. I studied that man more than
what I wanted.
Test
You can check my Twitter. I had us going Kayvon, Icky. Those are the 2 that I wanted. And obviously they took Kayvon first, then Icky went. And so it was like, or I think Icky went before Kayvon or after. I think it was after. But
pick right after.
Yeah. So, but that's who I wanted. I didn't want Evan Neal. So, but
yeah, I wanted Evan Neal. I thought that he was a really great player in college, and he was. He just hasn't put the work in. Hasn't been what we hoped for him to be. I also don't want an offensive lineman in the first round. I think the Giants have enough talent. They just have to actually develop it. I'm not saying they have enough talent to have a great offensive line, but it shouldn't be league worst. It should be somewhere in the middle, and that's good enough for now. And maybe we can continue to build next season. But right now, they've got a lot of talent just being wasted on the offensive line is how I see it. And I'm not saying it's high-end talent again, but when you're pouring in first-round pick, third-round pick, fifth-round pick, another first-round pick, you got to actually get those guys on the field and develop them. I just think Bobby Johnson did a really bad job of that over the past couple
Now
of years.
he's with the commies. So
Oh, dude. Actually, JMU hired Chris Smith, assistant offensive line coach to Bobby Johnson.
That did happen. So good luck to you and yours.
Yeah, thank you.
Bobby Johnson hire screwed me in so many ways. Not to go on a tangent, my dynasty team is in shambles. This free agency ruined my dynasty team. I now have all 3 Commanders running backs on my team, as well as 4 Titans on my team. And so me having Eckler, B-Rob, and Chris Rodriguez with Bobby Johnson as their O-line coach is absolutely horrible for me. Nobody wants to trade me. Nobody wants them. And I'm in shambles.
Let's just pray for Allie in the chat real quick.
Like, please. Tajay Spears, Titan. DeAndre Hopkins, Titans. Calvin Ridley, Titans. Tony Pollard, Titan. Like, that is my dynasty team right now.
Holy crap. I forgot Tony Pollard signed with the Titans. Wow. That feels like it was so long ago.
So that's how my life is going at the moment. But hopefully Bobby Johnson makes the Commanders' offensive line suck too. That's going to be so much fun.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I haven't been crazy about the moves that the Commanders have made for the most part. I don't think Dan Quinn was the right hiring. I like Adam Peters over there. I think that was a good hiring. But outside of that, I feel like they've just not done it right this offseason. And when they take Jaden tomorrow, I think they're going to turn Jaden into a bust. And that's unfortunate because I think Jaden's a good dude. Good. Got a question here from a familiar face, Will. Question is for Will. How would you feel if the Giants traded down and drafted a wide receiver? So maybe not taking one at 6. Anybody you're eyeing in a potential trade down?
Rome Odunze. I mean, that guy's pretty good. I know he's the consensus wide receiver 3. I don't know. Honestly, I'm gonna be completely honest again. I don't know much about him. I do know that he's pretty good, but I guess if they traded down and got a haul and then took Rome Odunze at 10, let's say they trade with the Jets, I'd be pretty happy with that. You get a haul, you get a good wide receiver. There you go. Bad answer.
I love Odunze.
I'm under a microscope right now.
I think he's well spoken. I saw something with him with Kay Adams today where he was talking about how he studies Devontae Adams and that it said he has like some basketball footwork, which is interesting, that he's studying his game. And that's something that I really like. I'm really big on Odunze. I would be really happy if they took him as well. It's like kind of like, it's like I go back and forth depending on the day. It's like sometimes I'm like, I really want Malik Neighbors, but other times I'm like, I really think Odunze could just be that guy. And every time I hear him speak, I just fall in love with him again. So hearing him say like, oh yeah, I've been studying tape of Devontae Adams, like that just like got me excited. So I was like, okay, and now I want Odunze again. So
yeah, that makes me excited too.
Where do any of us stand on Brian Thomas Jr. here? How do we feel about him and a potential trade down? Someone mentioned that in the chat, and it's been mentioned before from our viewers. So anybody got a take on Brian Thomas Jr.? Anybody think, what are we feeling?
I can't answer. I can't answer. I mean, I can give you a fake answer, but I can't yeah, I'd be happy. There you go.
Yeah, I'll throw it out for the real goons of the channel that are deep in the trenches of the draft lore. I've mentioned many times on the show that I am lower than most on Brian Thomas Jr. My official wide receiver rankings for this draft class, I've got him at number 10. So much lower than the consensus number 4. I think that he is a player who is very limited in his skill set right now. I think he's got the potential to develop into something more. Freak athlete, but I think it's going to be tough to really harness all of that athleticism and develop his route tree when I think it was like 70% of his routes were either goes or hitches. So really going to be tough to try and get this guy over the middle of the field and make him an all-around receiving threat. So I think he's too limited. I wouldn't take him in the first round. I know a couple people mentioned him in the chat, so that's my take on him. Eric's got another question here. This one's for Allie. Chris Olave for a third?
I know that's just it's just not gonna happen.
That's
Chris
rage bait.
Olave's yeah, Chris Olave, low key. This is gonna be my girl moment. Chris Olave is one of my football boyfriends. I have the biggest crush on Chris Olave. I am in love with that man. I I like him on this. Well, I won't say I like him on the Saints because I don't know what is going on with him on the Saints. I actually feel like he's being wasted just a little bit. I don't know what's going on with the Saints right now, but I don't know if I would trade for Chris Olave though. If we have a chance at a receiver here, I might just take the receiver we have here in the draft, then trade for Olave.
All right, so imagine the Giants trade their first round pick this year, their second round pick this year, their first round pick next year, but they hold on to their third round pick this year. Do you flip that for Olave if it's possible?
If they
think you
what?
do. I think you do. If they trade their first this year, their first next year, and their second this year, but they still have their third, and if Olave is available, if you didn't see, the New Orleans Saints general manager said everybody is available on the trade block on that team. He said nobody on that team is untouchable. So that's why this conversation is being brought up. And Olave, obviously stuck in a little bit of a bad situation with Derek Carr and the Saints.
Yeah, oh my God. And I love Derek Carr, but Derek Carr was pissing me off. Like he was yelling at Chris Olave. He literally threw the ball into the fucking bleachers. Like, how do you expect Chris Olave to catch that? And then he was yelling at him because he didn't try to catch the ball. Like, bro, you threw it so over his head, not even God was able to catch that ball. Like, I don't know. Like, and I love Derek Carr too, but it's just free my man Chris Olave. Oh my God.
Eric's going off in the chat right now. This is crazy. He is mad. I knew it was rage bait too.
He said, "Take Carr, whoever you want. I'm dead."
Yeah,
Hill,
I don't think we want Derek Carr.
Yeah, I'm
Eric.
sorry,
I don't think
Eric,
that's going to
you can keep
happen.
him.
All right, so draft 8 p.m. tomorrow. It's 8:15 right now, so less than 24 hours, 13 minutes. I think the first pick would be in by then, so we're just about there. It's going to get really exciting over these next 24 hours. I can't wait for tomorrow. Before we wrap this up, though, how do we feel about doing a quick mock draft on the PFF mock draft machine?
Please, let's do it. Let's do it.
Okay.
All right, you don't have to beg, Will. Relax.
I'm sorry. I'm really excited. All right, I'm sorry.
All right.
I'm nervous as hell.
Now that you said it's under 24 hours, I'm actually pretty nervous too. I got a knot in my stomach right now. I don't know what's gonna happen. I'm very nervous.
Yeah, I'm gonna be on the edge of my seat. We have like Knicks playing freaking game 3, draft going on. I'm going to be a nervous wreck tomorrow.
That Knicks game 2, that was my first Knicks basketball game I watched since the 2021 playoffs.
No way.
It did not disappoint. It did not disappoint.
Bro,
that was a great game.
When I tell you, I'm sitting, right? I'm like about to cry because I love Jalen Brunson. He's been having a bad game. I hate seeing people clown Jalen Brunson. It just makes me really mad because he's like the best thing that happened to this Knicks franchise in a very long time. But I'm like, damn, he's having a bad game. I'm getting nervous every time he has the ball in his hands. We're down by like 8. I go on Twitter. I'm like, yeah, this game is over. I'm so disappointed. I'm like, damn, like they played so bad. And then out of nowhere, they just started going crazy. You have Jalen Brunson finally making a shot. DiVincenzo going in. Freaking Hartenstein, my goat with his block.
God.
I was like so into it. I was screaming. It was insane. That was one of the best
screamed too. I'm obviously a New York sports fan. I've never really watched the Knicks, but when Dante DiVincenzo hit that 3, I was sitting on my couch right to the right of me, and me and my roommate got up. I screamed. It was like I was watching the Rangers. You think I'd be watching the Rangers? Yeah. I screamed. That was awesome.
It was.
I'm glad you guys had such a spiritual awakening here with the Knicks. But let's get back to the Giants here and wrap it up with this mock draft. So, stick and pick. Do we want to make a trade here to start it, or should we just roll it through to number 6?
I want to roll it through.
Yeah.
What do you guys want to do?
I'll stick and pick. There you go. 3 quarterbacks off the board. Neighbors and Marvin Harrison Jr. off the board. What's the decision?
Oh, honestly, I would trade down.
So Dunze or trade down for me. I think I might lean into the trade down.
Maybe trade down.
I'd lean into the trade down.
Okay.
Let's see who's interested. We could trade down, but we get the Saints involved here. Maybe we take 45. Let's imagine the Saints are trading up for McCarthy, and we pick 45 for him. What do we think about that?
All right, yeah.
Okay.
Let's do it.
The chat is telling us not to get cute and take a Dunze.
We're going through the what if scenario if they passed up on the receiver. Odunze is probably the right selection there. But now we're picking 14, and I'll tell you guys what I would be doing here. It's Terry and Arnold's cornerback out of Alabama.
Yeah, I
He's
was
an
gonna say
absolute
that
dog,
too.
and
Yeah.
I think we
I was
need
gonna
help
say him or
opposite of Banks.
DeJean.
Yeah.
DeJean's also really good,
Yeah, I
but
was gonna say
I
one
don't
of
think
them.
he's a scheme fit necessarily.
Yeah.
So
Isn't he kind of more of a safety too?
I think he's a true corner, but it
Mhm.
depends. It depends how you view him in your scheme.
Mhm.
So I don't think we're screwed though. Jeffrey Wheeler doesn't like the trade down, doesn't like the selection at 4 or the
We
talent at
do really
14.
need a
But
cornerback, though. Are you
Dude, and then you got
confident with
two
our
young
cornerback
corners
room?
that are cost controlled too.
Yeah.
yeah, there's some good corners on the board here. I'm gonna go Terry and Arnold. I love the way that he plays. I think that he's a really good player. But I do agree with Jeffrey Wheeler. Like this is a pretty steep drop off in talent.
Yeah,
There's
yeah, I
reason to
agree.
be upset if this does happen. But you got to keep in
Yeah.
mind you got an extra second round pick. And to be fair, if I plug this in more realistically, the Giants probably got a future first round pick in that trade as well. So if they're trading up for McCarthy, so I think it's something to keep in mind. But let's go Terry and Arnold, and let's move ahead into our 2 second round picks now.
Oh my god, I'm so scared to see who's there.
And see, now you got wide receiver talent littered on the draft board,
Oh.
which is the point that I keep on making.
Who's left for D-line? I'm just curious.
We missed out on Michael Penix by 1 pick, though. That's pretty tough. And somehow we missed out on Xavier Legette. I guess he went. Where did he go?
Yeah.
Where is he? I don't see him on here. I'm blind. Oh, there he
Unless
is.
they, oh, there he
42.
is. To the Texans. What?
Wow,
That doesn't
that's
even make sense.
yeah, it doesn't make much sense to me.
On the
Their
D
receiver room
line,
is stacked.
on the D line, you have
Receivers
Braden Fisk and Chris Jenkins available.
Intriguing. Okay, back to receivers.
Troy Franklin, don't even say his name. I won't even condone.
Keon Coleman.
So I am so low on Troy Franklin. If you thought I was low, guys, on Brian Thomas Jr., I'm way lower on Troy Franklin. Keon
What about
Coleman's
Roman
good.
Wilson?
He's an exciting player. I like Roman Wilson a lot, but slot receiver.
Yeah,
Don't think
so-
that Giants want to
Yeah.
go. They need a big outside guy. I think of their outside wide receivers here, Keon Coleman makes sense. Troy Franklin, but again, don't say his name. Pierce Hall can kind of do both. He can go inside, outside, but primarily inside. So if you guys want to go receiver here, I think we're going to go Keon Coleman.
I'd go Coleman
Okay,
too.
yeah.
But we could go Chris Jenkins.
Chris
but keep in mind,
Jenkins,
we got to pick 2 picks later now that we made that trade. So.
I think you take Coleman and then you take Jenkins with the next pick.
Hopefully Jenkins
I
is
want to
still
look
there.
at that, and I also want to take a look at running backs, just because.
Okay. All right. Coleman is the pick, and Franklin went next. So
Okay,
the
we
Colts
could
just
still
drafted
take
us.
Jenkins then.
Good bust. But these are the running backs available. I don't think it's time to take a running back.
Yeah,
Jonathan
no.
Brooks coming off of an ACL tear. Some other injury-prone guys in there. So I'm thinking that it is.
I think we take Jenkins.
I'm thinking it's
Yeah, I
Jenkins.
think we got Jenkins.
Jenkins, yeah. I like that.
Man, people don't like this mock draft, but I'm not going to lie. There's some serious talent being taken by the Giants in this mock draft here. I got to say. All right. Jermaine
can I
Burton.
look
If you
at running
guys
backs
don't
now?
know the story
he's
of
good.
Jermaine Burton is a tremendous talent. They have him available at 70 here. I think he's going to be available way later due to character concerns. But this guy is legitimately a first/second round talent that's going to be available probably on day 3. So I'd keep an eye on him as we get into maybe if you want to talk about dynasty leagues, late round flyers. I think Jermaine Burton is a guy that maybe you want to take a chance on in those leagues. But here's the running backs that are available now.
Blake Corum off the board. I guess it's a 3rd round now. I went basically a 3rd round pick.
I like Blake Corum. The only thing that I'm like, is that not saying that he is like Singletary. I just feel like they have like similar skills. I don't know. I love Blake Corum.
Of these running backs, I like Trey Benson the best, and Jalen Wright trails closely behind him. But if you want to go running back, I'd go Benson. But we could also see what else is available on the board. Blake Fisher is a really nice right tackle out of Notre Dame who could probably snag Evan Neal's job in his first week on the job. So that's something to keep in mind.
Oh, Spencer Rattler's there.
We could go Rattler. Get a quarterback, some competition for DJ. What do we think about that?
I'm so happy I'm not Joe Shane. I would be
Yeah, nah,
horrible.
that's gotta be so stressful. God, I can't even imagine. I think in my life stress, nah, the draft is.
What are you feeling, Tone? I feel like you are like the most likely to be GM out of three of us.
Yeah.
If this is how it actually shaped out for the Giants, I'm going to assume I didn't plug it in again earlier with the trade down, took Terry and Arnold there. I would assume that the Giants got a future first round pick in that trade, and that's probably what they're going to plan for quarterback. But nah, just to keep it for the sake of what we see on the board right now, I think you do have to take Spencer Rattler here if you're the New York Giants, just based on your needs for 2024 alone. Other than that, though, Blake Fisher is definitely calling my name. I think he's a great right tackle, and again, could probably start for us. But I think we're going to have to roll the dice on Rattler here. So we're going to do that.
All right. Fine. This is so nerve-wracking.
All right. So now we are into round
over.
4. The fans are not happy about Spencer Rattler.
Ooh, I can't even see the chat.
They haven't been happy about anything. And
They haven't liked a single pick
Giants
that we've
fans
done.
are not going to be happy with whatever happens.
We might be able to make them happy with Ben Sinnott, though. He's an exciting prospect, and Darren Waller is likely on his way out of here. So
yeah, I think he's retired. I think he's done.
Unless now we want to go running back, or we want to take something else. What are we thinking?
I'm trying to think
I could see us taking a tight end here, but
I could too. I do like Audric Estime, though, and I know that the Giants like him as well.
Screw it. Let's take a running back.
Oh, fancy.
Let's get frisky.
I don't know. Ben Sinnott's a pretty good player, though.
What about Cade Stover? That's a name I know.
Yeah, you like Cade?
I don't know. I just know his name. I just know Cade Stover. Like,
to be honest, I don't know too much about the tight ends here. Even the last year, I was big on Laporta. I think I told Anthony even before the season started that Laporta was the best tight end to come out of that draft class. I was big on Laporta, but now I haven't done any tight end homework.
I think the only tight end that I really know extensively is Brock Bowers, and that's because I love him very much. He's like Jeremy Shockey Jr. in my opinion. I like him a lot.
All right, let's go ahead with the running back in Estime because, first of all, Will made the pick already, and plus someone in the chat wants us to take Audric Estime. So
there's 2. Let's go.
What do we get?
An award. Oh, look at that.
We got A-. Okay.
Everyone was mad at our draft. Look at that. A, B+, B+, D+.
Listen, I get why fans don't like this draft, but we're kind of trying to do a non-consensus draft. We're hoping that this isn't what happens, but we wanted to take a look at what could happen if the Giants don't go QB or wide receiver in the first round. And I think that if that's the case, if this is your worst case scenario, this is a pretty good case scenario here. I mean, you're getting 3 immediate starters. I see why you guys maybe don't like this mock in the chat, but Terry and Arnold, Keon Coleman, and Chris Jenkins are all starting for you from day one and making an impact. Chris Jenkins in particular is probably a really good player for you in year 1. Terry and Arnold has a good chance of it as well. And I think that Keon Coleman is definitely a boom or bust product, but you've got 3 starters here from day 1, and you've got a rotational running back in Audric Estime, plus a high upside backup quarterback. So I think that this is a really good mock draft, to be completely honest.
I wouldn't be mad at it.
I wouldn't be mad either.
I don't think it's what happens, though. I think trading back is definitely risky, and I'm not exactly sure that it is what's going to happen, but I thought it would be a fun exercise to go through and see what could happen if the Giants do trade back. So I think it was a good example of that, and yeah, pretty good discussion there through that mock draft. And now, Will, it seems like the sun has set and you are sitting in the darkness. I don't know when that exactly happened.
I usually only keep one light on in my house downstairs when I'm downstairs, which is usually most of the day after I get back from school. And I forgot to turn on the light next to me. And now it looks like I just enjoy sitting in the dark. And I swear, I don't like the dark. But
you're scared of the dark?
Yeah.
All right. Well, on that note, we are less than 24 hours from the New York Giants picking in the NFL draft. Well, I'm not sure about that. How long is each pick again? I don't remember. It's 10 for each first round pick. 10
I think
minutes?
it's 10.
So?
I thought the first overall
Sheesh,
pick was a
man.
little longer than it goes down to 10. I'm not sure though.
Oh
We
man,
know who they're taking. Honestly, it'll be so funny if they don't go Caleb, even though they're gonna go Caleb. But like, imagine they didn't take Caleb
Hey, it could be
Williams.
like 2018 where Sam Darnold wore a brown tie to the draft because he thought he was going number 1 and didn't.
yeah,
That would be
real smart of
hilarious.
Sam Darnold there.
Yeah, good job, buddy.
Caleb Williams is going to be a Bear officially tomorrow, and JJ McCarthy is going to be a Giant. So we'll see. No, I'm just kidding. I really don't know how it's going to go tomorrow. I honestly, if I was placing a bet on it, I'm thinking Malik Neighbors is going to end up with the New York Giants. But
Yeah.
it's wide open this year. The Giants can cut this thing into 17 different directions if they want to, and I'm just ready for it all to be over. So excited for tomorrow night. Of course, check us out on the channel. I'll be live streaming and reacting to the picks in real time. So make sure to check me out. And any final words for the chat before we log off here, Allie?
May the force be with us all tomorrow.
Perfect way to
That's
put it.
real.
Perfect.
How about you, Will?
Let's go Giants.
There you go. So that pretty much wraps this one up. Make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed this live stream. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode. And comment your thoughts down below in the comment section if you're watching the replay. And make sure to go ahead and give us a 5-star review if you're listening to us on Apple or Spotify. But that'll pretty much do it. Catch you on the next one. Have a good one. And let's go Giants.
Let's go Giants.